All right. First of many deep dives into this NBA Finals series this week. We have Chris Forsberg outside of the Chase Center in San Francisco. Grant Liffmann from NBC Sports Bay Area joining us as well. Grant, the experience factor is going to be tossed around a lot. I'm not going to give anything away. I read the article on your website out there in the Bay Area about how everyone is viewing this finals series and who they think are the favorites to win. Pretty overwhelming in favor of the Warriors. Who did you pick and how many games and why? How are the Warriors contingent viewing the Celtics and this series?
Yeah, it's funny. When I looked at, what everyone was saying in terms of the experience, we got to look back and say the Warriors themselves, when they won in 2014-15, had zero experience and they were playing LeBron James and, guys that were very experienced and they won. So I actually don't. I agree with Steve Kerr. I don't look into too much in regards to the Celtics being overwhelmed in that regard. I would say the Warriors, though, do feel very comfortable in the finals. I could see that factoring in. But in general, though, a lot of it comes down to health. And for the defense for the Celtics, to me, they're fantastic. I think they match up very well against the Warriors offense. The way the Warriors play, I think the toughest type of defense are what the Celtics do with their length in the wing position. I think a lot of it comes down to how Robert Williams is feeling. I think he looked he was struggling a little bit there in the series. The Warriors, what they'll try to do is put Robert Williams and Al Horford into high ball screens and have them switch onto their guys. And that's where their bread and butter is. They'll have to try to get Steph Curry, Jordan Poole, others isolated with them. Meanwhile, they'll switch the ball around and move it. I heard what everyone was saying about the physicality and how the Boston Celtics can be out physical the Warriors. Let's not forget, the Warriors also out-physical the last three series, right? They won the rebounding battle against two teams that were supposed to be the best offensive rebounding teams, and then also went into against a Dallas team who had been pretty physical with the Suns before that. So the Warriors are an underrated physical team. I don't think they get the reputation for being that, but when you put in Draymond Green, Kevon Looney, Andrew Wiggins, who's played very well physically, I think it adds up to, if the Warriors are healthy, if they get back Otto Porter, potentially Andre Iguodala, and Gary Payton II, I think the depth is just there for the Warriors, and defensively, I think they will be great against the Celtics, and that's why I said Warriors in 6.
Chris, what is your counter to that when you hear Grant talk about people underestimating, maybe most importantly, that Warriors defense and their physicality?
Yeah, I'll admit, when you go through the stats from the season, you see that for most of the year, there at the end, they were second in defensive rating behind only the Celtics. It sort of speaks to that they can ramp it up. And we'd like to think that Steph Curry is the potential to be picked on at times, and that the Celtics can seek those matchups. But I go back to it. You got to do it. You got to make them uncomfortable. And the Celtics offense hasn't played to a crisp enough level in these playoffs to necessarily think that if it does turn into a shootout and if the defenses don't go up a level, that they can sort of hang with someone like the Warriors. But I am eager to see it. As much as the Warriors have seen physicality in these playoffs, they didn't always respond well to it against Memphis. Gutted through that series. Dallas is a little bit more of a finesse squad. I'm eager to see. Again, the Celtics, the biggest challenge for them is coming off of two very physical series and a short turnaround. Can they maintain that level? And just as Grant said, if Robert Williams isn't out there, their defense goes down a level. We'll see how Al Horford's legs hold up as he approaches his 36th birthday. But if the Celtics dig deep, if they play to their level, they can challenge this team with their physicality.
Well, guys, one thing we know for sure, the NBA really is a star-driven league, especially when you get to the postseason, right? And both teams have a huge star, the Celtics in Jason Tatum, the Warriors in Steph Curry. But of those two, Grant, I'll start with you because I think I know the answer from Chris. Which of those right now would you take? Like, which is the better talent? Is it Curry or is it Tatum?
I think Jason Tatum's an absolute stud, and I think his future in this league, I think he's going to be eventually a first ballot Hall of Famer, and the way he's playing these playoffs have been sensational. Having said that, when we talk about experience, when we talk about what Steph Curry does, sometimes people look at the stats and they look at him and go, oh, he's an incredible shooter, but, he only averaged 26 points and Jason Tatum's averaging this many. You have to remember that Steph Curry's presence on the court changes everything for the Golden State Warriors. So while, Jason Tatum's having an incredible individual performance this entire postseason and carrying the Celtics, really, Steph Curry is getting double teamed at half court and having to throw the ball away, which makes the Warriors that much better. So it's just hard to sometimes put people side by side, especially when they're two different positions, right? You have somebody who's a big, strong wing versus a combo guard. So at the end of the day, it's hard to compare the two, but there's a reason why Steph Curry's been the MVP a couple times, and he's still playing at extremely high level. I would still have to take Steph Curry in the end.
Chris, I know when we talked about this yesterday.
The big
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the big challenge, of course, is can Marcus Smart take on that challenge singly? And obviously you can't defend Steph Curry with one player, but can Marcus Smart be the primary guy, make it difficult, make it so you don't have to throw two bodies at him over and over again? Jason Tatum has been great, and I think he's the better two-way player at this stage of his career because of everything, the way that Tatum can impact with playmaking and shooting and scoring and on the defensive end. But I will say the one thing that scares me is the whole legacy thing, right? Like the one thing Steph hasn't done is be a finals MVP. And I do think they're at the point where they know these opportunities aren't going to come along every year. But I probably would have thought that 2 years ago. So we'll see if Steph goes out there and how much motivation he has to sort of put himself in a whole nother echelon of championship winning and MVP finals, like all those things that really, when you rank the best players and the most impactful, we already know he changed the game with the way he plays. But it's going to be a huge challenge for Tatum to emerge as the best player in this series and avoid those lulls in consistency that we sometimes saw against the Bucks in Miami.
Well, one area that we all have already sort of touched on where the Celtics are elite is on the defensive end of the court. Their defense has been stifling this in the playoffs. They're giving up 101 points per game. It'll be interesting how the Celtics' physical brand of defense matches up against the Warriors' finesse offense. Cedric Maxwell, who was on our Bella Early Edition yesterday, said this about it.
They're tuxedo players, and they don't want to be touched. I mean, you think about it, they want to play a clean, smooth basketball game. Very much like this team that I played against, the Los Angeles Lakers in '84. The fact that they didn't want to be touched. We want to play finesse. We want to play showtime. Well, when you knock a guy on his ass a couple of times, then the whole tenor changes.
Grant, I just have to ask you, when the Warriors get knocked on their ass, how do they respond?
It's funny. I don't know how many years. The Warriors have been in the playoffs for so long. And in 2014-15, I remember Barkley saying they're a jump shooting team. That it's been the moniker and the motto that people have been using against the Warriors, that you can out physical them. They don't want physicality and they don't want to be touched. And I don't think it'll ever go away if we're at this point in their careers and, it's still being said that way. This team is a lot tougher than a lot of people think. And, you're talking about one of the toughest guys in the league, and Draymond Green is the anchor of their defense. So, I certainly disagree in that they're this tuxedo team that likes to finesse. But I will say that they aren't some pounded inside type team. Of course, they are a team that likes to dance on the perimeter and then attack. That's just how they've always been, and that's kind of what they're going to still go with.
Chris, what I'm curious about, and you alluded to this talking about Jason Tatum and sort of the lack of consistency at times, the way that the Warriors play defense, is that something that the Celtics offense might be able to exploit in a way that they weren't able to with Milwaukee and Miami and get into a better rhythm offensively?
Sure, you're going to try. You're going to try and do what like the Mavericks did and put Steph in pick and rolls and make him work defensively and hope it tires him out a little bit. But they do have to be another level of crisp. They got to be willing to move the ball. Trenni, as you opened the show saying, there's too many points where they get frustrated and then they just devolve back to bad habits. If they avoid that, if they move the ball and force the Warriors to cover, they can loosen it up. I do think that's one of the reasons that if you're trying to be optimistic about the Celtics' chances, they haven't played anywhere close to the way they did in the second half of the season in these playoffs. Now, some of that, again, has been the physical brand of defense that they've had to go up against in Miami and Milwaukee, but, they can go up a level in terms of, making things easier on themselves and scoring more consistently. So that's their challenge. Again, I think they're going to hunt matchups, but it's still difficult when Draymond's back there, when you do have savvy vets, like Iguodala will come in and do all those things. So they have to be ready to take advantage of the matchups, but they can't get caught up chasing them because they sometimes did that against Miami.
Yeah, Grant, what can we expect defensively from the Warriors?
Yeah, the Warriors would absolutely hope the Celtics go more ISO. They've been having to deal with Luka Doncic in the playoffs. They've had Nikola Jokic, who had the ball primarily a lot of the time. So they're very comfortable with players that go ISO because they feel like not only do they guys have good defenders at the point of attack, but they also have the best help side defender, potentially one of the best in the history of the league in Draymond Green, and he's the captain back there. Also, when they talk about hunting matchups, Steph Curry has actually held his own very, very well this playoffs, and he's played really, really well defensively. The matchup to hunt really has been Jordan Poole for opposing teams, and they will try to do that. But again, the Warriors actually welcome that sometimes when the other team hunts a matchup, because again, to them, that means the other team's going ISO a little bit, and it lets the Warriors kind of navigate defensively. When the ball's whipping around and they're having to move and spread out, that's where the Warriors get a little vulnerable. And that's why I think the key to the series for the Celtics is Grant Williams hitting a lot of corner threes. That is where the Warriors have a vulnerability, is giving up the corner. And then also Derek White. The Warriors are going to make sure that Derek White, Al Horford, and Grant Williams are the ones taking the most threes, especially Marcus Smart as well. And they're going to try to force them to be the ones that end up with the ball with 4 seconds left on a shot clock, and they're the ones taking the three. That's going to be their defense.
Well, that last name makes a lot of people shudder here, especially one of our favorite colleagues, Phil Perry. Chris Forsberg, we're going to relieve you of your early edition duties. It's only like 3:30. I don't know, go grab a latte or something. But now we're going to take a look at the Ford Big Board. Built for America, built Ford proud. The Celtics have been impressive on the road in the playoffs. They beat the Nets in both games in Brooklyn. They were 2-1 in Milwaukee, and they won 3 of 4 against the Heat in Miami. Let's bring in John Tomase into the conversation. Tomase, if there's one place where I've said that maybe the Celtics are going to have an edge, is that they have been so good on the road, even against teams that were not losing at home, especially a team like Miami. Like, it sounds crazy, but I feel like they're getting a break not having home court advantage because they just haven't played that well at the Garden. Yeah, so I'm going to disagree strongly with that. I mean, you want home court, especially when we're talking about what Golden State does at home. That's one of the best, if not the best home team in the NBA. That place is wild. That is a completely different level. No disrespect to your Milwaukee Bucks. That is a completely different level than anything they faced before. You want to be home for the finals. This team is dragging, so I can't put that in the advantage column at all. Why are the Warriors, Grant, so good at home?
They feed off the crowd. They really do. They're one of those teams that their energy gets boosted defensively and offensively when the crowd starts going crazy. So they've always been that way. For some reason, just when if the crowd's silent, and the Celtics have a chance to really slow down the pace of this game and really make the crowd a little quieter, and that really slows down the momentum and the energy of the Warriors. So if I'm the Celtics, that's what I try to do. Warriors really feed off the crowd, and that's how they've always been. And not that every team does it, but they really get that extra pep in their step, and they want to put on a show. That's when Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, these guys, start launching, feeling a little more confident, because they're pretty much showmen at the end of the day.